Hello friends, and welcome to today's video. We're going to be going over a nervous system review. This is going to include everything from the divisions of the nervous system down to the spinal cord cross-section as well as neurons. Let's start off with the divisions of the nervous system. For this case, we are going to represent the word nervous system as NS. Alrighty, so starting off, we are going to look to the CNS. The CNS stands for central nervous system, and this is going to denote the brain as well as the spinal cord. The central nervous system interprets information, whereas the other side of things, which is the peripheral nervous system, is going to sense information, relay information, and act on information. This peripheral nervous system is going to be broken into cranial and spinal nerves. When we look specifically into the peripheral nervous system, we see two main divisions. These divisions are going to be the somatic nervous system as well as the autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system, right over here, is going to innervate skeletal muscle. This can be voluntary or involuntary. On the other hand, you have the autonomic nervous system. This controls smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, glands, adipose tissue. So these are obviously going to be very involuntary type things. From here, we have two further divisions, the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is going to be of the rest and digest category. So that's a fun way that you can remember that. Basically, whenever you're resting, some things that happen are your heart rate slows, your breathing slows, your eye muscles relax, everything like that. And that's going to help you rest and digest. Another thing that happens in relation to the digest is your digestive system starts to kick in again. And this is contrasted with the sympathetic nervous system, which is termed as the fight or flight nervous system. This is going to be like if you were being chased by a bear, right? And with this bear, your muscles have to be activated and your breathing is going to quicken and your heart rate is going to quicken. Your eyes are going to need to focus. You're going to need to stop digesting things because now is really not the time to digest things. And it's going to handle all of those responses. All of those things that it innervates is going to affect those when the sympathetic nervous system is in use. So those are the major divisions of the nervous system. These are very important to know so that you can further break them down into actions and components. So the most basic components of the nervous system are going to be neurons, which is what is displayed on the board, as well as glial cells. When we're talking about neurons, there are three major types. These are going to be sensory neurons, which take in information from outside stimuli, interneurons, which connect different sets of neurons and add in for interpretation, as well as motor neurons, which are going to send signals out to your motor systems in order to make an action occur. We also have three classifications. For the sake of the length of this video, we're just going to draw this type of neuron, which is going to be the multipolar neuron. However, you also have bipolar and pseudo-unipolar neurons. There are a few more other types of neurons that you can look into further, such as anaxonic, but for the sake of this course, we're mostly just going to be talking about bipolar, pseudo-unipolar, and multipolar neurons. So, when we discuss what neurons do, we first need to break it into its pieces. So, I have all of these things drawn out right now, but the basic components are as follows. You have dendrites, which are these little projections. These are going to connect to other neurons and create almost a bridge where information can be passed along. So all of these little protrusions of the dendrites are going to be connecting to separate other neurons through the form of synapses. In the middle, you have the soma, which is going to be the cell body. This is going to be pretty typical as other cells. You know, it's going to have all of the other types of organelles like the nucleus, nucleolus, you're going to have mitochondria, you're going to have endoplasmic reticulum. And on the note of that, if you see these little dots right here spread throughout the neuron, these are only going to be found in neurons, and these are called Nissl bodies. When talking about Nissl bodies, what we're actually going to be talking about are clusters of rough endoplasmic reticulum with ribosomes on them. So that's what it's going to show up as when you're examining neurons under like a microscope per se, or in these scientific diagrams. These sheaths are going to allow signals to travel faster projection through propagation of the signal. But before we get into the length of it, we're going to talk about this portion of the neuron specifically. This is just where the signal is effectively going to jump between in order to be where signals from the other cells are going to be integrated into a larger signal. When passing a certain threshold, this is going to send along an action potential
where you're going
down
to have
this
terminal
portion
of
that
the
are going to
neuron,
synapse
which is
with
going
the
to be
dendrites
known
of
as
other
the
cells.
axon.
This
So
axon,
these are also known,
in many
I just refer to
neurons,
them as terminal buttons, but they're also known as synaptic knobs. And these are just going to synapse, as we've seen in other synapse drawings, with the dendrites of other cells.
Alright, so to go back to the two major components of the nervous system, aka the neurons as well as the glial cells, we're just going to touch back upon the glial cells just for a quick moment. This was something that was covered mainly in your lab section. However, it is pretty important to the understanding of the functioning of the nervous system, so we're just going to review it now. If you feel as though you don't want to review it, you can just skip this part, and that would just be pretty simple. But so first, we have 6 major types of glial cells, and their functionality is mostly going to be split into the CNS and PNS locations. So for a lot of them, they're just primarily going to be found in one region, whereas other ones are restricted to those regions. So when talking about central nervous system glial cells, we're going to start off with astrocytes. So astrocytes are structural support for neurons, and they transport substances between blood vessels and neurons. They also help form and regulate the blood-brain barrier, which has selective permeability. So to expand upon this idea a little bit more, the blood-brain barrier is basically what is protecting within the brain from
as well as
many other things that are going on within the body. So it helps keep out the toxins, and they're the only ones that are going to produce certain nutrients around the axons. It's very important for the central nervous system, the regulation the spinal cord. Your internal this is going to be neurochemistry. So next is going without functional astrocytes that wouldn't be able to occur. And these are going to perform phagocytosis as well as structural support. So these are going to line the cavities and they help of the CNS. And they're also going to produce and regulate this, which is very important. Which is the cerebrospinal functions and types of neurons found within the PNS or peripheral nervous system. We're going to first look at Schwann cells. Are actually going to make up a structure known as the peripheral plexus, which is going to be found in the ventricles and the cavities. This is in direct contrast to the oligodendrocytes, which are only found in the CNS. Your brain. Schwann cells are in the PNS, but they're going to perform essentially the same task, which is putting out the myelin in order to propagate action potentials faster. And so this is a very, very important function, and it's really important to note the difference between the two systems and who produces this. This is also going to shield axons from certain types of degradation. Next, we're going to look at the satellite cells. These are support ganglia. They help support neurons and regulate the environment of the peripheral nervous system. So really just supporting is their major role. So, with the spinal cord cross-section, you now have the basic units. So, for the final portion of our lecture, we're mostly just going to be focusing on drawing the spinal cord cross-section. The reason why the screen is mostly blank right now is because I'm going to draw it with you. It can be a kind of difficult thing to draw, and it takes a lot of practice, so please practice this a couple of times over. So first you're going to want to start off with the circle.
This is just basically going to represent the base level of your spinal cord. If cut in half, it would just look like a circle. Next, we are going to take a line, draw a little bump, and then come down like that. And on the bottom, you're going to do the same thing, but without the bump. It's going to come up like that. And then just complete the bottom portion here, bump. Except you're going to want to extend them as well into the body of the spinal cord. This is going to look a little bit like that. Kind of like a puzzle piece, almost. And then you're just going to erase the little bit where it crosses over. So that's going to be the base unit. Next, we're going to put a little circle in the center. Great. And then to represent our neurons, you're going to come in with a line, draw a little loop, come in like this, draw a person without, like a stick figure person with no arms. It's going to go out like that. It's a little rough, but you get the gist. So, let's talk about what these specific parts are now that we have the most basic level drawn. So again, this is going to be your spinal cord cross-section. It's going to be made up of two major types of matter. So you're going to have your white matter, which is going to be this portion, as well as your gray matter, which is going to be this portion. So I know that this is just basically a drawing right now, but if you were to Google spinal cord cross-section, which I recommend that you all do, you will see that this part is physically gray. The individual components. Whereas this part is physically white. So of course there's many neurons that are rushing through. So it really is just denoting the system, the color, which is why the matter makes up that type of matter. But in particular, if we were to just draw one neuron per portion, you're going to have this neuron, which is different components. This is going to be your sensory or afferent neuron. So, for instance, this bump right here is known as the dorsal root ganglion, which is why the soma kind of wraps up like that. This is going to house the soma. And basically, its signal is going to be coming neuron like this. So this is also going to have over here. It's going to connect the dorsal root neurons from your finger that are taking in, as well as on this stimulus from you. That's important to note that it can be on either side. It's shutting your finger in the door. It's going to send that information. So this is going to be facing through here. This side is going to be toward like your physical back. Next, it's going to hit this little guy, and then you're going to be known once it enters. This interneuron is going to be used for interpretation of signals. This is going to be known as the dorsal whether to send the signal forward, what to do with the signal. It's basically just going to connect the two other neurons. So again, this is the interneuron, and then you're going to go into the dorsal horn, going to be found right in this middle portion right here. Next, and then finally, you're going to have the motor here, efferent, which is going to be known. The signal is going as the ventral horn. Which is then going to extend with the motor neuron. These are typically going to be multipolar, which we drew earlier, and they're going to send the signal out to different parts of the body that can both the dorsal root and the ventral root. So, for instance, if we're sending a signal that we want the finger to move, spinal nerve, and then this signal is going to be kind of brought in through here, whatever stimuli cause that. It's going to be interpreted here, and then this motor neuron, if stimulated correctly, is going to send a signal out to physically move that finger, so that the finger is not just staying like this. It's so then we look at this circle. This is going to be the major components of the spinal cord cross-section. But also an important thing to note, the reason why it looks like this is because this is your physical spinal cord, right? So this is going to be a part of your central nervous system. Whereas these parts composed of like the spinal nerves and the dorsal and ventral roots are going to be actually part of your peripheral nervous system. So that's just where the division comes in. That's why when it comes in here, it becomes the horns and everything, as well as why the interneurons are only found in this portion. Great. So just make sure to practice this drawing a couple of times. Hopefully yours looks a little bit cleaner than mine does, but this is really, really important. It's going to show up, I would honestly say, for the rest of the year. It's a very important thing to be able to draw and to understand, especially as we start integrating different concepts into it. This is the most basic level of the spinal cord cross-section, but you're going to end up going more in depth with it.